change that, but
I'd like to call to order good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Town of Clarkdale Town Council meeting on Tuesday, April 11th at 2023 at 2023 at 6 p.m. Roll call. Vice Mayor Hunsitter.
Here.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Babbitt Pierce.
Present.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
And please note that Mayor Priddon-Bauer is here. We have a quorum. Before we get started this evening, I just want to give thanks to the Verde Valley Fire District and to Cottonwood Fire District and the wildland firefighters from the National Forest Service who diligently and very swiftly stopped the fire at Tuzigoot, Tavasi Marsh last week. It was an uncomfortable moment, and they did it well and stayed on board until it was completely out. So I just want to give our thanks for the work that they all did to protect our town, even though it seemed like it wasn't in our town. It was in our town. We have Tuzigoot, it's ours, and Tavasi Marsh is close at hand, and it could have moved quickly into Peck's Lake, which would have been within our town boundaries. So just a note of appreciation to all who worked so well on that. Thank you. And to our police department for traffic control and taking care of the intersection and keeping all the people who wanted to know what was going on down there away. So thank you also for all the work you did to keep that area cleared of people who kept wanting to go down into Tuzigoot, into that area. So thank you too also. So tell everybody thank you, Mike, okay? So with that, tonight, I just wanted, as I've been doing, is reading our mission and vision statement, because I think it just sort of helps us keep clarity of why we're here and the work that we do. Our vision statement says the town of Clarkdale connects our unique history, proximity to the Verde River, and small town charm to a future with a vibrant economy. We cultivate an environment where residents and businesses can thrive, providing services and jobs for our residents and capitalizing upon tourism. We sustainably enhance our infrastructure, support the arts and education, and develop recreational opportunities to create a bright future for our entire community. Our mission statement states that the town of Clarkdale serves the community by providing amenities, infrastructure services, and public safety to enhance quality of life. We are stewards of our history while we sustainably and resiliently plan for the future with an emphasis on community engagement and transparency. So with that, the first item this evening on our agenda is general public comment. It's time for members of the public may give comment of a general nature. No official action may be taken by the council during this period of time unless it is to direct staff to look into a matter. Is there anybody who wishes to give public comment? See none in the room. Is there anybody on Zoom? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, let's move on to our next item on the agenda, which is current events. Item A, all of our reports from mayor, vice mayor, and council members were submitted electronically. I think we've all received them. Organizational reports, Cottonwood Area Transit.
No meeting.
Okay. Verde Valley Transportation Planning Organization.
Susan, you attended that last meeting, right?
I did the TAC meeting.
Oh, excuse me. Then I get the two confused. Verde Valley Transportation Planning Organization has not met.
Okay, thank you. Northern Arizona Council of Governments.
No meeting, there'll be one next week, and I'll send the materials.
April meeting, okay. NAMWA, Northern Arizona Municipal Water Users Association.
Also no meeting this week and also a meeting next week.
We're always off week with these groups. Transportation Policy Advisory Council.
You received the minutes from our last meeting either yesterday or today, and we have a meeting tomorrow.
Got Verde Front Leadership Council. I believe we're meeting on April 20th. Just in time for me to get back and go to the volunteer appreciation event. Greater Arizona Mayors or Mayors and Managers report. We haven't met, but I think they are in the process of trying to get a meeting together. Sustaining Flows Committee.
No meeting.
Okay. Yavapai Committee for Young Children.
And it's actually supposed to be communities.
That's right.
Communities. And we have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Financial reports, as you saw in your packet, was our financial report. I think everything looked very good. Our revenues are strong, particularly our revenues in our interest income seems to be holding very strongly, even though our permits are down, because we're not seeing the kind of construction we saw over the past. Any questions about the financial report? No? Let's move on to, item 5. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce our court prosecutors. Yes. We have Mark Dirtz and Josh Butner. Welcome, both of you. Finally, we get to see you in person in chambers.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. Come up to the podium and say a few words. This is the rest of our court team that work with Judge Kelly and all the people down at our court center down in Cottonwood. So
I'll just say a few words, but Josh is the one who handles really everything in the court. My firm has been practicing for over 45 years in Prescott. We have a presence over here in the Verde Valley too. We appreciate the opportunity to represent the town of Clarkdale. It's one of the best jewels, I think, in the Verde Valley. And we've got a guy, Josh Butner, who we're lucky to have as a member of our firm, who's heading up the prosecution team. Josh?
Thank you, Mark. And I just have a couple of things to say. One, I'm thrilled to be at the firm. It's a wonderful place to work. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to come down to both Cottonwood and Clarkdale, especially Clarkdale. I too love this area. And I have to give a thanks to the Clarkdale Police Department because during the Vietnam Veterans celebration, I rode on a motorcycle with my father and noticed that we were escorted by the Clarkdale Police Department. And at some point, one of the officers was giving a salute to every one of the riders. I mean, it was just an incredible experience. And my father was a Vietnam vet, and so he really appreciated that support. And I saw the fire from, I just happened to be up at the asylum eating dinner with some visitors because I said, you have to come to Clarkdale and go up to the asylum and look down on the beautiful view that they get to live in. And so we did. And then all of a sudden we saw the fire. So, and also this is just subjective, but I noticed that there seems to have been a downclick in crimes in Clarkdale, which is wonderful. So I think it was February and March kind of looked like a downtrend, which is just a great thing. So you guys are doing something right. And just happy to be here. Thank you so much. Thanks for the warm welcome. And thanks for coming over and visiting. If any of you want to have the opportunity to come over and see some of what we do, I'd love to host you. And I know that Judge Kelly would love it too. So thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much. Any comments or questions for our two? But thank you for being here very much. We know that it's being run really well. Everybody seems to be having a very smooth team working there, and that's much appreciated. So
Judge Kelly, I had lunch with her last week and she just raves about you. So
Great job.
I think very highly of her as well.
Thank you. Thank you both for coming and visiting.
Thank you. We
Yes.
appreciate the opportunity to represent you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to consent. We have 3 items on consent this evening. Approval of our minutes, proclamation on Fair Housing Month. If you all remember, we did a resolution last month, and this month we have the proclamation. And then the Centerville Road right-of-way and public utility easement is on consent. This is for the part of Centerville Road that is coming to the town. Anyone want to pull any of these 3 items off of consent? Seeing no one wanting to take anything off, I'll take a motion to approve consent.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent agenda items A through C.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember O'Neill and seconded by Councilmember Babbitt Pierce to approve the consent agenda items A through C. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Let's move on to the first item in new business. Arsenic treatment plan backwash tank. It's a discussion on proposal from Fan Environmental for the replacement of the arsenic treatment plant backwash tank for the amount of $222,142. And I believe Ruth Mayday, Community Development Director, is speaking on this lovely topic. Ruth, welcome.
Yes, so I'm pleased to come back to council here now with the proposal from Fan Environmental for replacement of the backwash, the arsenic treatment plant backwash tank replacement project. It'll be a great day when I don't have to say those words again. So this is kind of what the existing equipment looks like from the ground up. As we talked about in that strategic planning session, the tank is in very poor condition and really needs some replacement. We were fortunate that working through Gordian, this new procurement process and group, they were able to locate a replacement tank and some replacement equipment from Fan Environmental in Prescott. And there it is, new tanks, yay. Those are the ones that we will be purchasing for the $224,142 to replace the existing tanks. We are going to put them in a slightly different location. You can see the little pins, though, one to the right of the big white reservoir is the current location right by the arsenic treatment plant, which is in that little building. And so the new one will be going down around right where there at this is the proposed new location. We met this morning with the design engineer and the new town engineer. They don't see any issues with this. We're minimal design costs, and we will be doing as-built when we're done, so we know exactly where the tank is and where all the power lines are. The existing tank will be filled with sand so that it doesn't collapse when somebody drives over the top of it. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Lisa's here. She can answer any of the technical questions that you have.
This placement allows for us to continue running the plant during the project. That's why they suggested a different location. So we're not having to shut the plant down to do the work.
Good, that answered my question.
Yeah, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Why is the tank being filled in place instead of removed?
It's easier to do that. It gives us a little stability. Lisa knows all
you
the
want to come up
details.
and explain?
There's actually some concern about instability of the soil. When they built the arsenic treatment plant and did the installation of the original tank, it's all built and filled. So if they take that tank out, they're worried that the slope will slide. And they'll have to so it's safer to leave it in place and fill it with sand.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Perfect. Yes.
Thank you to everyone who has done all the work on this project. Obviously, we desperately need it. This is not something we really have a choice about if we want to have clean and safe water. So thank you for making this happen so quickly.
Thank you. Lisa really has done a lot of very hard work on getting this facilitated, just following up with the contractors and getting everything lined up. And we're very excited about making that call tomorrow morning.
Dave. Absolutely. And it's only lightly used. Is that what it said?
Right. I don't think they had that tank in use for very long. Yeah.
Less than a year. Okay.
And we're getting it for what, half price? Yeah. Of a new tank. And it's here with the other concern with not going with this tank was we don't know what the lead time for tank production is. So this seemed like a pretty good route to go.
Any other questions? Yeah, I very much appreciate all the work that you've been doing on this to get us this tank at half price. I like that thought. That's fabulous. And it's a good tank that's been hardly used. So we need to get it done.
We know the expected life cycle for it.
Yeah. Do you know?
These are 20 plus.
And the existing one was in for?
In 2008.
Okay.
It's fiberglass though, right?
It is, yeah, it's very lightweight glass.
So it wasn't from your notes. It was not actually the correct one to put in.
It wasn't traffic rated and it wasn't bolstered or faceted on the inside for more support. There's no extra support.
We're lucky we got 15 years then, huh? Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, will you take a motion?
Absolutely.
I move that we approve the proposal from FAN Environmental in the amount of $222,142 for the replacement of the arsenic treatment plant backwash tank.
There's a second to that?
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Mayor Hunsetter and seconded by Council Member Babbitt Pierce to approve the proposal from FAN Environmental for the replacement of the arsenic treatment plant backwash tank for the amount of $222,142. Any comment on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Yay, you get a new tank. Have fun. Let's move on to item 7B, club facility use and cost analysis. And I believe we have Joni Westcott is going to lead this discussion. Joni.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I am so excited to be before you this evening on a project that we've been working on for a very long time. I know you're quite aware that we've been doing this, but this is the DMAIC process for our facility rental processes. Few times. And what we're doing is looking at how we can improve those processes. And that's exactly what a DMAIC is. I'm so delighted. I really want to give a shout out to Town Manager Guthrie, who has initiated this process. And even though sometimes I wanted to kick her over the over the process, it's really, I see the value in it. It's been really great. She's guided, been such great guidance and helping get through the process. It's not been an easy one. It's a lot of material. We're just going to take our time. I'm glad you got through the other stuff really quickly because I don't want to miss anything. And I want to make sure that we vet this out in a way that you understand what we've been through, what challenges we have with the facility, and how we can possibly move forward. So the DMAIC is a process for, I have to move this out better. is just simply a strategy to improve processes. So there's several steps along the way. You start, the D is define, the M is measure, and which helps document, you document the process, you go through the collection of the data, and then you move into the analyze phase, where you really get to the root of what your challenges are and how, what you're looking at as a whole. And then the improve stage will be where we talk about the challenges, and solutions, potential solutions that we would like you to consider once we've gotten through all of this fun. So we're going to start with the define section, where we started with the process of developing our team and determining who needs to be at the table, who needs to be a part of these discussions, and who all is involved in facilities. And I think you'll learn a lot from this, because we did a lot of things, even though we know it very well. We learned a lot. So we have our public works team, our parks and rec team, our police department is involved in facility rentals, and of course our champion town manager, Guthrie. Just want to mention a little bit about the Parks and Rec department, and I know you're all very well aware of what we do, but we do have two full-time staff. We oversee all the parks, the facility rental operations from start to finish. The Verde River at Clarkdale Recreation, our events, community special events, volunteer program, Parks and Rec Commission, and the list goes on of all the things that we do. And we have some new projects coming in, as you well know. We've been writing some grants. We have been, we have a couple of park renovations coming on that we'll be overseeing. The grant management alone, now that we've gotten the money, you know that story. And we've got our Trails Master Plan coming on, or strategic plan. And then of course, one of our team members is also very involved in the tourism and marketing and social media process for the town-wide. So, and just, to blow our horn a little bit, we are going to be we'll receive and managing almost $2 million in state and federal and public funds in the next few years. So we're really excited about that. Then I also want to talk about the public works team, because they're the other part of our organization that spends the most time along with Parks and Rec with facilities. Primarily that's involved in preparing the facility for the rental, and then cleaning up after, making sure it's stocked, making sure everything is in working condition. It's quite a process for them to go through for every single rental that we do. And of course, Public Works also manages all the streets, the parks, the right-of-ways, the grounds, buildings, the RAP, flood control, drainage management, and their list goes on and on. They've got a bunch of new projects listed here too. They are looking at replacing the floor or resurfacing the floor in the auditorium. They're finishing up the HVAC, which that's going to be amazing. We're really excited about that. They will be involved in the Selma Mangini Park renovation and the Caballero Park oversight with that and helping us with that. And repairing the soffit on the building. They are doing the town park gazebo and improvement at working with that. And then also a whole bunch of street stuff starting with the Broadway overlay, second phase of the project. So just to give you an idea, we do a lot besides the facility rentals, both departments. So what we did was we defined what is our problem. and it's been a long time we've looked at this and known that we have issues, and to sit down and really figure out what that is was quite interesting. But we have a great facility. It's beautiful. There's nothing like it in the Verde Valley. We have incredibly low prices, and we have a large auditorium. And that makes it a very desirable place to rent for folks in the Verde Valley, because there's not many places like it, and our rates are very, very reasonable. Then we have, so some other problems. We'll get into more problems. We got so many problems. We'll get through them all. So our rental challenges start with our events being some of them being incredibly large and hard to manage. And that goes in two ways, where it's labor intensive for Parks and Rec staff, because for larger events, they want to be in the facility longer. They want to come by and see it more often. We have all kinds of challenges with that. The sound levels are very high for some of these large events. Unattended children running through the parking lot, running through our buildings, throwing rocks at the buildings, had issues with that. The stewardship of the building is inconsistent. We have some people who are very, very caring of the facility, and they really want to get their deposit back, and others who don't take it quite as seriously. Folks aren't leaving on time. Last minute requests to add tables or to come into the building sooner. Those are some of the challenges that we deal with. They struggle a little bit with the off-duty management process. We have to help them through that, and their insurance, that is a time-consuming thing. And yeah, the request for multiple visits. So under maintenance and setup, there's ongoing annual maintenance that has to be done throughout the building to care for the kind of wear and tear that is happening in the building on an ongoing basis. And that includes equipment wear and tear. We have improvements that are needed. The infrastructure stress on things like our floors, doors, those kind of things. Securing our off-limit areas, that's already something that we've had a discussion with Public Works about. In the auditorium, there are some areas that people can get down into the basement. That's a challenge for our ambassadors to watch over events and make sure that people aren't going down there. So we're talking about securing that. Parking, we have 90 parking spaces and we have events with 300 people. And so people, you know, the streets end up being, the businesses end up being impacted, et cetera. And then this area is a challenge because we have to, our Public Works team, or if we have an event in here, they have to move all of these chairs into this area. They have to put up walls and block off the council area. So we'll talk more about that, but that has been a challenge, and we're concerned about the wear and tear on the floor and the furniture about that. And then we have our miscellaneous concerns, just being outdoor cooking, damage of the premises, some things we've already talked about, check in and check out, third-party insurance. So we'll talk about some of those things. And some of the things that we're going to talk about are policy things that we know as staff we can take care of, but there's a lot of things that we need your help and guidance on. And so this whole process has helped us identify from start to finish all of those things. So now we move into the measure and analyze. Did I miss a slide?
Keep going.
Did I? Oh, I did. It's an important one though. This time.
Keep going.
Okay. Okay, we're going. Sorry, skipped a page. Okay, so in the measure and analyze, typically this process is begins with the measure and then goes into analyze. We actually have quite a few we have a mix and match of things because as we went through, some things made sense to be in a certain place. So you'll see at the top of the page, you're identified as to what exactly that process is. So we analyze and we begin to really look at how are we doing what we're doing and who's doing it. So one of the things that we did that was very interesting to us is we said, okay, these are some of the things, some of the new projects and some of the things ongoing that we do where volunteers are concerned. We wanted to see what their contribution was. So we analyzed that. And what I really want you to pay attention to is the fact that our volunteers are doing all that orange up there. Our volunteers are doing on very important things like grant writing and the Trails Master Plan, taking a huge load off of staff on that. I worry because if we lose one of those volunteers, it's going to be tough because they've got a huge amount. Yes.
When you say staff here, does this include ambassadors or is it just?
It is
Parks and Rec staff?
It is just Parks and Rec staff. Yeah. So these are the things that Parks and Rec does for in kind of those job that job list that I gave you, but it's also like the new things, like we're developing a Parks and Recreation strategy, the grant management that we're going to be doing. Volunteer coordination is ongoing. We have a volunteer who's helping with at least 50% of that. And then of course, our volunteers that are grant writing and helping us manage the grants through the process of actually getting the funding and getting projects going. And the Trails Master Plan is going to be a big one over the course of the next few months. So we're very grateful for those volunteers. And then we also looked at what staff is, particularly our Parks and Recreation specialist manages the facility rentals. I do support on that. And some of the numbers that we're going to have later while I'm thinking about it, in case I forget, are simply per time and then Public Works and Police, and we'll go through. Does not include any director or managing support in those numbers that we're going to come through. But you can see that our Parks and Rec specialist spends at least 25% of her time. And that varies depending on the season. If we're in really high season, high rental season, that's more. Same thing with the tourism and marketing. Sometimes that's a lot more, sometimes it's a little less. They vary, but on average, they're at least this amount of time. And then the other 50% of her time is spent supporting all the other things that Parks and Recreation does. So then we have some fun creating, and I just have to give you a little visual. This is called a process map. I was going to take it to the wall there, but I was really up there. Oh my, to see a process. And it's very tiny and it's very hard to read. And this is a piece of it. So we actually did this process where we sat down and said, okay, renter call. What happens next? All the way through rental to the end. That includes every walkthrough of the facility. That includes every follow-up with the renter. It includes sending work orders to Public Works. It includes Public Works processing work orders. This is what it takes. She wrote very tiny. We didn't realize we really were showing this off to anybody, or we thought we'd do it up to Rick.
Actually, it's pretty impressive just to do that.
It's really, and that's really good information. And the whole idea behind this process is to figure out what you need to improve. You know, what's taking too much time. And we actually identified a lot of those things just from our processes and things that we can change. But it also helped us see who's doing what and how much time they're doing. So what we did, we involved Public Works and PD. We took documented notes from our ambassadors and some of the things that they do, and we know that they do because we train them for that job. And we took this information and we put it into a spreadsheet that I know you can't read this. And if you really want to, I'll get you a copy, but it shows the process. So each of those, I know, I can't read it either, even with my glasses. The process, each of those symbols on the side show kind of where we had to go in the process, how we looked at each thing, and where we had to document things, where we had to make decisions, where we got held up, and where we had to spend some extra time waiting for things to happen. And so as I said, it starts from the first call through the walkthrough, down to where we contact the police department if there's alcohol being served at the event, and about 50% of our events are alcohol involve alcohol service. They go through a different process on that, so every part of the process is not included in this because it doesn't really involve town staff until the police sign up to work. So, so we did not include that, but we did include the process of sending it to them, having them do the determination, them having to go to ODM and set up, you know, what it is that they're gonna, what the event is and who and how to get it set up for work. And then this part also goes through the scheduling of the ambassadors, etc. The second page, now we're skipping through. Second page, that the pink, little pink symbols that go across, that's where if we have damage in a facility. So all of these things that go off to the side are not the normal, necessarily normal processes. They're, now we've got to go and spend extra time because we've got something wrong and we have to go back and do it. So it was really helpful in getting all that information together. So then what we did was I color coded every single one of those items to who does it, what department does it, and how much time it takes. And then, and so the colors that you see under hours was a part of that process where we said, okay, Parks and Rec, we added up all those little boxes and figured out how much time. So you can see here, I'm not going to go into all the detail, but we were able to come up with and we used a 5-hour event for a small event because that's about an average of a small event. And so we figured out these are all the hours for one event that it takes for staff. Very eye-opening for us. And then we also took, you can see the little asterisk with the, right here with the facility cost, the asterisk, we took the facility cost, we took information that we received from Public Works. It was a little old a couple of years ago, but we increased it by 10 or 20% depending on where we felt that needed to go. And we came up with those numbers. Now this number is just the cost to operate the building. This does not include CIP projects. So this is to, and it doesn't include cleaning because we include cleaning under Public Works on the yellow line. Okay? So it just includes the utilities, the paper products, thank you, and just general maintenance. So they have to check the, they have to get the fire extinguishers checked, annual maintenance items. So that includes all of that. And we took that and divided it into a daily cost of $119 and then figured out how the square footage of the men's lounge and came up with an average cost, not the men's lounge. We figured out the cost per event. So, so the total cost per rental is $620 for a small event. Okay, the gist of it is our small event cost recovery fee is calculates to $124 an hour. We are charging $70 an hour for the same 2 spaces. So just some things, and I'll go more into those details, but just to give you an idea. So the small cost recovery gives you an idea. This is the total cost of $620. And this is how much we charge the renter for a small event, 5-hour event, $350 total, bringing our loss to $270 for a small event.
So we're subsidizing these events out of our general fund. We're Those are dollars
Goes
that
into
could
the
go
general,
other
yes.
places.
And then and also keep in mind it's taking time away from the staff, because staff is also spending that time, and that's included in that price. But we have the same thing with a large event. We broke it down, same concept, same hours, but this is a 20-hour event, multi-day. So the large events are, they come in and decorate on a Friday, they have their event all day Saturday, they come back on a Sunday kind of thing. But we averaged it out and said, usually they're about 20 hours total. So we use the 20 hours and seeing calculation. But interestingly enough, the cost, okay, well, there's a couple things I got to explain. So this $43 for our current charge for the auditorium and ladies lounge is because of our funky way that we're charging right now. So our fee schedule is set up to, we charge a certain amount for the first 8 hours, and then we charge $13 an hour for every hour after. So the large events, because they're longer, we actually recoup our costs better, because over time we end up with all of our money. So it's more expensive to do a small event than it is a large event, but the large events are the ones that are most impact on our building in general. So what else? Oh, our cost recovery on that, on those are 71. Now, I wanted to mention this column. It's not, we're not really going to go into it, but it's the basic cost plus if there's alcohol or damages. So on that process map where the things went over, we kind of calculated that as well, just as we wanted to know what the difference was and how much more time that was taking. Please, if you have questions as we go along, don't hesitate to ask, because I know it's a lot to process. It's a lot of money, a lot of numbers. So for the large event cost recovery, we have, it costs us $1,400, and our charge to the customer is $860. So our cost recovery is $550 now.
How many days is this?
This is a multi-day 20-hour event.
This is the multi-day 20-hour event. So
Keep in
again,
mind,
we're
the total
subsidizing.
cost includes staff, and it includes the facility cost, facility maintenance, not CIP.
So again, we're subsidizing.
So then we just took a look also at rental trends, just to see over the last few years what that looked like. These numbers are actually calculated on an annual, not fiscal. So if you ever look at your spreadsheets, they're not going to exactly match up, but they're very close. And so you can see we had a downturn obviously in 20 and 21, but then we had a spike. We're up higher than we have been. And this year we're probably more. And we've even been trying to, we've had things going on in the facility, so we haven't been renting as much. But it's really draining on our staff. So
more big events, just more events, no facilities, other places. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, well, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but we've learned that, yeah, a lot of places that used to do facility rentals are getting out of that business because it's a problem. So things like like places like the Elks Lodge, they have a pretty decent sized facility, and they don't promote, they don't even answer their phone. You should have seen us trying to go through that process. So the next thing we did was we looked at who's using the facility. So there's a lot of people using the facility. We have our annual agreement holders. We have our community partners, including Verde Valley Fire, the railroad, the high school for the prom, and our town hosted community events, the Gem and Mineral Show, the Verde Valley Stand Down, Flynn Brown. These are all things that have happened over the last few years. Our town meetings, we have 72 meetings a year in this facility. We have our employee appreciation in here. The police have their banquet awards. volunteer appreciation, community members. We have our residents, our non-residents, and our profit and nonprofit organizations. So there is a lot of use in the building, but it's not, it's about 200 days a year if we add up all of that together. It's about 200 days a year.
And that's different parts of the building.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of those that you list,
Yes.
what would be the percentage of who pays versus who doesn't?
Next slide.
Okay, all right, good segue.
It's coming. So here we go. Annual facility users. These are the people who pay. Our annual agreement holders pay less. And we are not going to go into that conversation this evening because we'll save that for another time because it's an involved process as well and something that needs to be looked at. But we have our non-residents, community or annual agreement holders, residents, and profit and nonprofit businesses. So that kind of gives you an idea of how what that looks like. Can you repeat that question?
I just, on this previous page, what was the percentage of who pays and who doesn't?
Non-paid.
So this gives a good picture. Thank you.
So 43% of the annual facility use is by non-residents.
Yes.
It's almost 50% of our facility is being used by non-residents. Is that?
Yes. If we go to this slide, we show you that of the paid rentals, we have of the Clarkdale residents versus non-resident rentals.
That's over 50%.
Yes, it's over 50%. It's 62% of the overall facility rentals are by non-Clarkdale residents. 38% are Clarkdale residents. Then we broke that down and said, okay, how are they each using the building? And the most interesting to us is that our Clarkdale residents are using it in a much smaller way with less, overall less impact. So events under 100 guests, 96%. And 4% are events between 100 and 200. So they're doing fewer large events and using the facility in a smaller way.
Oh, this chart is so telling.
And then, you know, and that's kind of what we're dealing with. So if you look at, you know, we're talking about impact on the building, 49% of non-residents are 200 or more in events.
And so, and I'm sure you have a slide coming up. So that says we are subsidizing non-residents using our building.
Correct.
Yes.
A lot.
I don't have a slide that says that, but
well, I think
that's the gist of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. If you look at that and you add up those dollars, that's a lot of money that we're using out of our general fund to subsidize non-residents using this facility.
And even our residents are getting a rate that is cost, you know, we're subsidizing them as well.
Yeah, we're subsidizing both, but I'm highlighting that because you can make a case for residents if we want to subsidize them. But I have a real issue with us subsidizing non-residential uses of this building.
Yeah, and the challenge, quite honestly, is we have of those different sizes of events that we're talking about, it's the ones that are over 200 that are the most challenging for staff that are working the events.
Yes.
And, you know, we've got a situation, you know, it's just, it's tough. And we really should have 2 ambassadors working those events that are over, and we don't right now. And quite honestly, we don't because we can't get them to work. I mean, they work on the river. It's a shared job. So they work on the river and they have a certain amount of hours a week that they can work. And then we've got a 3-day event that needs, 4, 5, 6 ambassadors to work, a few 8-hour shifts, then it's taxing on us. And many times we've not had ambassadors, and Public Works staff is covering that. I myself have worked events, Shell has worked events as an ambassador because we don't have someone.
So without expanding that ambassador area, it's a really tough situation to cover these events with town personnel.
Yeah.
One thing she won't mention that I will is for every event, either Joni or Shell are on call. And basically you'll see in the coming slides that they basically have about 3 weekend events per month. So they have one weekend where they don't have an event here, but they almost always have an event elsewhere going on. So Joni and Shell, one or the other, is on call pretty much every single weekend. And Joni does not get compensated for that at all.
Right.
And Shell gets a very small, on-call pay amount. So I don't think that that's something that really shows up in the data, but it's really an important point. It's hard for them to ever go on vacation. Okay.
And we do that, just so you know, to support the ambassadors, because we don't want them to be here with a large event and not have somebody to call going, this renter is saying that we could do this, or that you said that they could do this. And we're like, no, that's not true. So we're always there for support for them. And they know that, we're there. And then we call out Public Works if that needs to happen. Of course, they know to call the police department if they need it. So of the paid rentals, the non-paid use, which is events like Flynn, the Gem and Mineral Show, the Verde Valley Fire Department, the school has used the facility on occasion. So we consider at least the fire department, the school, to be community partners. And then we also have our annual agreement holders. So this kind of goes to your question, Deb, as to how many rentals are paid or non-paid. Well, no, it doesn't, but this tells you who pays, and or no, it does. It tells you non-paid.
Who use paid rentals?
About 17%, and those are town-sponsored events. And those, quite honestly, when we get into the problems and solutions, those are things that we think we need to look at, because it really is a decision on what we want to subsidize and what we should. Is it economic development that we're considering, or is it just good partners in the community? Those kind of things we'll need to look at. Okay, moving right along. The annual cost to operate. So this just is the breakdown of the cost of the building that I was talking about earlier. So it costs about $43,000 a year currently. We did increase the electric, because we know the electricity, and with the ACs coming into the clubhouse, they're going to, sorry, I don't need to turn that. As I was doing. So we took all of those numbers and broke it into sections to go, okay, how is that all? You can see it's pretty equal between the utilities, the products, and the building maintenance. The furnishings are low right now. So we purchased tables and chairs years ago. They break. We don't really have funds to replace. So another thing that we'll be talking about. Then we went into the fun of the market analysis. So this project Shell took on specifically, and she she talked to many organizazations who rent facilities, both in the Verde Valley, in Flagstaff, and in Prescott, and Sedona, to try to get something to compare. And I'm just going to tell you, it was insanely crazy and hard to do, because there really isn't anything that compares to what we have here. We have several spaces, and being a historic building. And that's one thing that we have to consider as we're considering what we might want to charge for the building. We're taking care of a piece of history here. And so we got to keep that in mind as decisions are made. So yeah, so we gathered all the data, square footage, and did some math. And we started with spaces that were the size of the auditorium, and having 3 different spaces made it much more difficult than just having one. But she was able to find some that compared slightly. Schuylkill, City of Cottonwood Clubhouse. The Sedona High School actually has a gymnasium that they do rent out, not often and not typically for some of the big birthday parties and things like that we do, but anyway, so you can see we have a wealth of information here as to what other people are doing in the community. And the only way that we could really relate it was to do a square footage analysis. And so that's what we did. We looked at the square footage of all 4 of those. And I do want to tell you that she talked to many, many more organizations. We just had to narrow it down. There was too many. It was getting too wild, and they didn't really relate. What was interesting to us, though, in these conversations was that that none of these other organizations have an ambassador or town staff on site for their events. They hand over the keys and say, have a nice time. We used to do that, but we decided that wasn't a smart thing to do. A lot of them don't always require insurance, which was surprising to us. Something that we do for every event, even if it's a community partner that isn't going to be allowed to use the facility unpaid, they have to provide us with their insurance.
That's interesting. I noticed here, particularly City of Cottonwood, their clubhouse, they don't need insurance unless you're over 200 guests or a large event. That is shocking. And let me share, because I asked the question of Shell, who was having the conversations. It's primarily because they feel they're already insured. They already insure their building, and so they're covered. We do it. We had a situation where we had a very expensive floor in the ladies' lounge. I'm sure you're aware, had to be refinished because a renter damaged it. And that insurance helped cover our deductible on our insurance, or it paid for most of it. I can't remember the exact who. Yeah,
but
so
it all got paid. We didn't have to come in. We didn't have to come in with any money.
It's why we want to have that insurance.
And it's not easy for the renters, and I understand, and it does show up as a problem for us because it's difficult. If it's a difficult process, they have to get the third-party insurance is it's a difficult thing, but it's something we would not forego. And then we had our men's lounge comparison, and same thing. Basically, what was interesting to us was to look at the hours also, and a lot of that right now we allow events. Well, we've actually changed our policy a little bit amongst ourselves, but we have events that go typically until midnight. The event has to end at midnight, and they have to be out of the building by 1 o'clock. Can you guess how many times that actually happens that they get out of the building by 1 o'clock? So now our ambassadors are stressed because they've got to work late, and having to walk around this building at 1 a.m. and make sure all the doors are locked. If you don't think that's creepy.
Especially when the ghost is visiting you.
Yeah, when the ghosts are here, it's definitely not good. So yeah. So we took all of the square footage numbers, and that helped us figure out a price comparison. I'm getting there. Oh, well, that was the end. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I appreciate that you've been asking them as they come along the way.
I do. Let me look them up if I might. Thank you. That's okay. I made some notes along the way. Going back to small event based on 5-hour average, which building is that? Is that the whole facility?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, what we actually did was we took an average of how the building is actually used. So a 5-hour event typically is this space and the ladies' lounge. So we put those two together.
Okay.
And in this comparison, that's exactly what we did. It was the men's lounge and the ladies' lounge. And so what we charge, the current hourly fee is $70. Now, you notice for the auditorium, it was $43. This is $70 because it's only 5 hours. So when they get to the 8 hours, then it drops down to $13, and then we really start losing.
Because we're spreading the staff time over more hours, so it drives the cost per hour down for us. Just because some of those are pretty fixed, so the time to do all the paperwork for the rental is the same on either size of a rental.
Just off the top of your head, maybe you know, how often do you have damage after an event, regardless if it's small, large, whatever?
Not often. Not often. We probably, I would say, maybe 5–10% of the time.
And would you attribute that to the ambassadors being present?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. I would.
And I already got another question that I had answered if we had a cost differential for alcohol, and we do. Now, for that extra cost, I saw it was pretty significant, which it should be. Does that include extra bodies on site? Because I know other facility rentals, if you have alcohol, you have to have a couple cops. Even our own street fairs, we have to include the cops.
No,
they pay that directly.
They pay
that directly.
That doesn't go through the town.
It used to include the officers because we paid our officers. And that cost to the renter was $65 per officer per hour. Okay. The police department felt it was more efficient and better for the police officers to have more opportunities to work extra hours off overtime. So they went through the off-duty management system. And so our renters now the police department still determines how many officers need to be on site, but they set up with, and we tell the renter how many. They go into ODM, they request that number of officers, so they pay ODM directly.
Right,
and our officers get paid through ODM.
Right, but the officers are still present.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get to. So if they have alcohol, we have additional police presence over and above an ambassador.
Large events, we always have 2 officers.
Okay,
but that's not a cost to
Acting
us.
Chief Mike is the person who makes that determination.
And those aren't necessarily Clarkdale police officers.
No,
They almost always are.
But they're not.
don't have to be.
They don't have to be. If our officers can't, absolutely can't do it. But I know they've told me one of the challenges is that sometimes 2 officers will sign up with ODM to work it, and then somebody will get sick, and then we have 1 officer again with 3. How many people? 400 people.
So, yeah. Any other questions for Joni before we move on?
Yeah, I'm still going through my, you said that the insurance is a challenge for, like, okay, say a festival wants to come in and rent the place and they need to get insurance, or maybe it's a birthday party or a wedding or whatever. Is there some agency here in the Verde Valley that we can point them to? Do we do that? Or
a company that we work with called Gather Guard, who actually, we give the renter that information, and they actually have designed the program for municipalities. So they actually, set everything, they have everything set up with our address in the system. And so the renter should just be able to go into the system and, do a few clicks. Where the challenge comes in is some of our renters are, English is not their first language. They don't necessarily understand the process. they get stuck along the way. We have to step in, and sometimes, I mean, I know for a fact that Shell has actually sat with someone and helped them do their insurance because they couldn't figure out how to get through it. They ask questions that they don't necessarily understand. You know, do you have, some are simple, like, do you have a caterer, or, but then they talk about third-party vendors, and you know, that doesn't always register. So we have to help them through that process a lot. And the other problem is that they don't always say that they have third-party vendors. And then we've got DJs and caterers in here without liability insurance. And that's not okay. And these other organizations, they're okay with that. Anybody can come in, bring any food, and you know, if somebody gets food poisoning and everybody dies, I guess they'll deal with that when it does. But the point is that, but it is just a bit of a challenge for them. And there is one agency, there are a couple of agencies locally that will do it, but they won't typically do liquor liability or third party. So we usually just recommend, if they go through GatherGuard, it's honestly the best way if we're not having to check the insurance to be sure. But you know, there's just, I mean, it's like anything, there's going to be challenges along the way. But thank you for asking those. Really
thank you for
questions.
clarifying the questions that I had. So thank you. That's it for me.
Any other questions for Joni? Keep on moving on.
We're getting there. You guys are doing good. Okay, so now we're in the improved section. So this is where I'm going to go through. What we did was set down, and all of those problems that we listed in the beginning that are staff challenges, that I missed that slide, that are challenges with renters, with the facility, etc. All of those problems we took and put in one big list, and then we prioritized that list. And we even took it to another level to say, you know, what steps, you know, really need, is this a policy, or is this something that needs to be, I just completely
ask council for guidance.
Right, ask council for guidance, thank you. So we did that, we prioritized. What I have here for you tonight, we're gonna go through are just the top priorities and some medium priorities. The rest of the things we kind of held out. We know that there are mostly policy changes that we need to do. They're not something that we felt we needed your guidance from today, but we feel like based on all of the information we've given you, we have a lot, there are some decisions to make. And so we wanted to talk that through with you. We came up with the challenges and the solutions that we think. Their suggestions, please know that, you know, these are open for discussion, and we'd like to have a discussion about that. So if you have any particular feelings. The first challenge is the rental revenue does not cover the total cost of operations or long-term stewardship of the clubhouse. So our potential solutions are to adjust and simplify the rates for cost recovery. And by simplify, I wanted to mention that we currently rent the men's lounge separately, the ladies' lounge separately, and the auditorium separately. What we find that most of the rentals rent the men's lounge and the ladies' lounge together because there's a kitchen. And then they also, when they rent the auditorium for the large events, they need a kitchen. So they rent the auditorium and the ladies' lounge. So what we kind of did was went on this process of why don't we just group it that way to come up with this. So when we get into the fees, you'll see that's kind of how we went and talk about simplifying. And also getting rid of the first 8 hours at this price, and then every hour after that at another price. It's very cumbersome and figuring out.
Easy.
Crazy. Okay, so our potential, we already went through the first one, adjust the Clarkdale resident discount. So currently Clarkdale residents pay $5 less per hour than non-residents. which is 10%. Analyze non-paid and reduced rate facility use. So that's another step that we'll be looking at. Set hourly minimums of 5 hours for the men's lounge and 13 hours for the auditorium to ensure cost recovery, because that's basically how it all works out for cost recovery. Yes, Lisa.
Does that 13 hours minimum include things like the First Friday events?
We're not addressing
Annual
reduced.
agreement.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, gotcha.
Those
Thank
are
you.
on the table.
So those, yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't want to interrupt her, but since we're talking about long-term stewardship of the clubhouse, I would love for us to consider a fee for each use, like on our utilities bill, there's a fee that goes to the stormwater. So there's a fee that just goes to preservation of the building.
Huh. That's a fantastic.
We're asking questions. I have.
Go ahead.
When you're talking about adjusting Clarkdale resident discount, are you adjusting up or down?
Well, it's going to be up,
Okay.
but it will be less, much less than what others are paying.
Okay. And then the hourly minimums, does that include setup and tear down?
Yes.
Or is that the actual hours of the event?
And what we did was we took an average of the day they come in before to decorate and the day of event, and we averaged it to be about 13 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they can sleep in between.
Yes, they can. And we don't really like currently, again, another funky thing about how we charge is we start charging from the minute they walk into the facility, and they pay for every hour with exception of 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. because they can't be in the building during that. Another cumbersome thing for our staff to figure out and how the charges go. But so we're thinking that it would be good to look at doing, doggone it, the air conditioning went off and it's distracted me.
It's the 13.
The price per event?
Yeah, it's the issue is
Oh,
that, yeah.
okay. So they like to come in because we charge that way. They want to get in there as late as they can on the decorating day. And so that they don't have to pay as many hours. If they came in early in the morning, they'd have to pay for every hour throughout the day. We're suggesting that once we set this hourly rate, that they can come in during staff time on a Friday or a Thursday, whatever day they're setting up. They can come in during staff time. That would reduce our ambassador concerns. We have ambassadors that really don't want to work late at night. And so that's really some of the challenge. Okay. I wanted to write down a fee for a separate fee for just historic preservation.
Or stewardship?
Stewardship.
Clubhouse stewardship.
It's a
Well, we
different
can-
topic,
I guess
water
that's it.
versus, so yeah,
Yeah.
we'll look into it.
Okay. Anything else on this page that?
I would say the other thing is, and maybe we recruit ambassadors that are just clubhouse ambassadors,
Right.
but they're not river ambassadors who are doing double duty at the clubhouse. Because I could see that being two different types of person.
It is. The fortunate thing for us is that everyone who's working on the river currently happen to be excellent ambassadors for the clubhouse as well. And I actually get to sit in on those job interviews when we're hiring. So, and Jen and I are on the same page as far as customer service, which is the most important thing, and reliability. We have amazing ambassadors right now who are just going over and above. If we call somebody got sick during prom and couldn't cover 10-hour shift or something, and several of them stepped up to
and
to
that's
help out.
great, but I think Laura's point is a
Yes.
really good point.
Because there may be somebody who physically can't do the river stuff, but would love
But
to do
who
this.
could do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, we did that at one point. We hired an ambassador specific to the clubhouse. Unfortunately, it was at a time that we weren't renting the facility very much. And you know, we don't advertise this facility, guys. This is just word of mouth, people that come to us. So at some point, if we wanted to increase facility rentals and we had someone, you know, to do that, then, and that's really what we would love to have, is someone specific to the clubhouse to help with, you know, the rentals, to help with all the aspects that are taxing.
Numbers are starting to show it though, that we're getting to that point where the use of the building almost would require the necessity to have dedicated ambassadors for this building are much more prevalent today than it was when those decisions were made a number of years ago, when it maybe wasn't used as much.
Right.
Definitely the numbers are showing that that idea should be back on the table.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Next challenge. Next challenge.
Yes, staff levels are stressed, striving to fulfill all rental needs. Support Parks and Rec supplemental request. So the potential solution is to support Parks and Rec supplemental request for part-time staff member. Kind of what we were just talking about, someone to help manage those things. Consider hosting fewer rentals or renting to Clarkdale residents only. Consider an earlier rental end time, perhaps 11 o'clock instead of midnight or 1. We do see, you know, for events that start serving alcohol at 5 until midnight. I'm sure Sergeant Brundridge could attest to those fun times. To consider capping event size for large events to 200 or 250. We have had the situation where we had an event that was only supposed to be 250. They did an open invitation, and these are some of the big birthday parties that we have. They did an open invitation to all, like on Facebook. And we had over 400 people showing up, and it was very difficult for our police department. It was difficult for our ambassadors. So, so if we had a cap and we get our ambassadors to really, we train them better to count, we have.
If you're going to address this later, that's great. Is there a penalty? For example, I have 200 guests, I promise, and I have 500. Is there a penalty, or do we turn them away?
Well, what we threatened to do, and what happened in that particular event, was they were shutting down the event. The police came in and said, "There's too many people in here. You have to shut down your event," and it didn't go well. It did not go well.
Right.
And so the penalty was that we withheld their $800 deposit.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
So second question is, can this fee adjustment, including, you know, Clarkdale resident, non-Clarkdale resident, can it extend also to events in the park? For example, weddings in the bandstand, et cetera.
Yes. And we did not, we have all the data for gazebo rental. We just didn't, because we're focusing on the facility this time, we didn't go there, but we do currently do that. Our Clarkdale renters get, again, a 5% discount for, they pay $25 for the gazebo instead of 30 for none. So but that's something that we need to look at, because we're investing a lot of money in our gazebo.
Right. And then along with that, there's going to be, I'm suggesting a universal policy so you don't have to come back every single time somebody wants to rent Tapco, you know, river access point, and so forth, or, you know, something like that, to have a universal plan in place.
Yeah.
And this only covers our interior or inside of this building. It doesn't cover anything on the view deck as a possible rental site.
Right. And that comes up in a little bit as far as the view deck is
Gotcha.
concerned.
Do you want our reactions to these solutions?
Yes. Either now or at the end,
Well, I think it's clear that you need more support, and we probably, for stewardship of the building, need to utilize it less. And we just have to decide how we make that happen, because I certainly don't want our community to not have access to this beautiful building, but it would be really sad if we used it all up, and so there's nothing left in 10 years that give people access to.
Right. Yeah, I'm
not against us rent. I don't think we should keep it just to Clarkdale residents, but I think we have to decide maybe what is the cap for non-residents. They're going to have to pay more. Definitely cost recovery. Absolutely.
And we'll probably make money off it.
We have that
Well,
in
here's the
the
Clarkdale resident discount. If my thought on that is that we need to figure out a base rate of what it costs to rent. And Clarkdale residents pay that base rate.
Yeah.
And anybody else pays 10% more, or whatever that number above it is.
We're gonna
I'm actually more than that probably.
Or whatever that is, but, but it's the base and going up versus coming down.
We want to make
We're
sure
right
we
on the
have
right
that.
track. We're thinking the same way. And
Yeah,
we're gonna
yeah,
get there. Thank
absolutely. And the capping of the size of large events, would that be basically the private events? Or are you talking about even, events with the partners? And
No, just private events.
I want to make clear, I think we need to talk about that. Okay. So this would be basically private events.
Yes, it would be private events.
Because those are the ones where we have the issues, right? They're happening at night, there's alcohol. I don't think the Gem and Mineral show is going to get like way out of control,
But they still spend a lot of time in the building. They have everything other than outside of not having alcohol. They still spend a lot of time, use a lot of resources.
We were kind of thinking that's a future project to
Yeah.
look at the partners and the contract holders, the agreement holders, and the ones that we're doing for economic development. So that's kind of another project. So right now we're really focused on renters.
Okay. And I'm all in favor of the earlier rental time. And I thought the alcohol licenses typically box them into a span of time. I thought that's what.
But you can still keep partying even if you're not serving anymore.
But are they?
So,
no, they don't have to get a
here's
special.
how it works.
They'll have a special.
Here's how it works. They tell us what time they plan to serve alcohol. And PD usually always has 2 officers for those events, depending on the size and who's having the event. And then they have a certain time that they need to stop serving. And that I think we've changed to 11, right, Mike? Yeah. So we've changed that to 11 o'clock to stop serving alcohol. So their event can go on, but they got to get the alcohol out of there and secure it. That can be a challenge as well. And Shell's dealt with that and having to help. I mean, because they weren't getting it out, she was having to haul beer into the ambassador room and lock it up in there because people were still coming in the kitchen and getting it. So that was a problem. But and those kind of things don't happen all the time. And most of the things were around one event. So we can't say this is the norm, but we can say it has happened. But then they can continue their event, but they can't have any more alcohol. And we make them have the police there through the end of the event. Because it has also been the experience that they stopped when we had it at midnight, they stopped serving at midnight, and the cleanup crew they're supposed to get everybody out of there. Everybody's not getting out of there, and the party still goes on, or they're sneaking alcohol, or things get out of control really fast. So, I mean, I'm a proponent for sure of cutting the time down to like 11, 10 or 11. A lot of places do 10 o'clock. I think 10's a little early personally, because, you know, but it's.
And I think your neighbors may appreciate the earlier time as well.
Right. Which is another, one of our problems is the sound.
I like the earlier rental time ending.
We missed the last bullet.
Yes. Increase the ambassador wage and improve job satisfaction so that they want to work for us. So that means maybe not having 300 people and one ambassador at events. So that's something, you know, on us that we can work on. But that wage increase is a part of your supplementals that will be presented.
When we put in here considering hosting fewer rentals or renting to Clarkdale residents, I'm not in favor of that, but could we say that maybe there's one time a year that we shut it down so all sorts of things can get done in here? Like say, look at it and say, maybe August is a month that nobody's using it. There's not a lot.
We kind of do that right now, but it's based more on when we can get projects done. So like we knew the air conditioning project was going to happen. So we started reducing rentals during the window of time. We thought the air conditioning was going to happen. But if we just say, you know, this is the month, we may not be able to get vendors or products.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about big projects, but maybe a maintenance month. Or, you know, something like that, so that we just do the basic, we never get to this little thing, or a deep clean. And maybe there's 1 month we could do that. We know the bigger projects are going to be, we have to manage those different, but maybe that's one way to give some like love time to the building.
But I
like that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, under considering hosting fewer rentals, think about this idea. We have, we're on average renting the facility 3 times a month right now. If we cut that down to 2 times a month, even where we only have 2 rentals a month, that could, you know, just that one large event, and we cut down the event sizes a little bit. Maybe we have 1 large and 1, we kind of have a, I'm just brainstorming, honestly, but to have a few less at one time, because that also is a really big challenge. When we've had 3 or 4 big events in 1 month, it's stressing on the public works staff, it's stressing on us, on, you know, PD, trying to get people to come in and work alcohol events, you know, 3 weekends in a row, and ambassadors, because, you know, they're busy guys too.
Don't you think though that if you adjust the rate to where it's fair market across the board, that's going to cut down on a lot of events?
Well, and with the rates we're proposing, yes, I do think it will.
Good. Okay.
You're right. You're absolutely right, and it's going to be a natural.
Yeah, I would say that's all part of planning for your capacity and what you can handle. And
yeah. Our next challenge is off-limit areas can be accessed by renters. We've already got solutions for that. We actually did a full walkthrough of the facility from basically head to toe with Public Works, and did an assessment of things that need attention, of things that we can do. One of the things coming up was this room, and I think that comes up in a little bit here, so we'll talk more about it. But just, you know, what things that we can do when we're renting the facility that help them, the challenges that they're facing, the challenges that we're facing, and working together as a really great team to figure out how we can make it work for everybody in a better way. So we've already had those discussions. Schedule additional ambassadors to supervise large events, so that, you know, like we have the issue with the kids running wild out front. We can have an ambassador stationed out front to, you know, and again, that's a policy thing that we want to we're looking at as to, you know, how we're going to set that. Do the kids have to stay in, or, you know, if they're outside, they have to be with an adult, but that doesn't ever work. And Sergeant Brundridge could also attest to that. Our ongoing and annual maintenance needs, plan for structural improvements related to the use of the facility, being electrical, flooring, the waste system, the windows that we know need to be replaced. The waste system gets taxed badly when the guys had the sewer blow up in the basement after actually it was, I think it was a Gem and Mineral show, so it wasn't one of our other events, but you know, high use is taxing on our plumbing. Anything on that page that we need to discuss or suggestions? Okay.
I think your solution over here about reducing the size of events that occur here would help solve some of that. Some of that.
And then taking that, you know, if you take a dedicated time to do some of the maintenance might help also. So I think lots of those can happen, but you're right. Big events just tax the system here.
Yeah, they do. Our next challenge is events over 150. Alcohol pose more staffing challenges, damage, risks, sound, and safety concerns. Potential solution is consider limiting. That comes up several times. Consider limiting events for standard rentals, and that doesn't. You know, you brought up a good question or a good point, Mayor. This is for private rentals. Exceptions can always be made for other, you know, and then limited the type of alcohol being maybe just beer and wine.
When I got married in Flagstaff 5 years ago, almost every venue that we looked at had stipulations on alcohol. So I think that's common. And yeah,
I think that's wise. Beer and wine. I think that's a really wise move.
It's actually easier on the host.
It is. Well, it is. It's not as costly.
No kidding. Yeah. Our next challenge is to replacement plan needed for tables and chairs. We need a plan for replacement. We actually did a supplemental for table and chair replacement for some to be able to do that, because we made one investment and now we are 10 tables down. We don't have the chairs. You know, the chairs are actually holding up pretty well, but yeah.
So when somebody rents the facility, say the auditorium, do they rent the tables and chairs with it? And it's included?
That question, because that was my next thing, is that we are proposing a table and chair fee.
Yes.
For in addition to what they pay, because right now they're all free. They come and the wear and tear doesn't, you know, it's not good, and they get, you know, you can only buy certain quality of product that's lightweight that people can schlep around, and you know, they're just they fall apart after, you know.
And if we do that, and if it's a fee less than the major competitor in the region, then we could make some money off of it and have money to replace.
Correct. Challenge our fee structure, confusing. This includes the deposit. I don't know. The deposits right now, we charge $300 for an event without alcohol, and they are fully refundable, providing there are no issues. And we charge $800 for events with alcohol. Okay. In my time, I have never known us to have to withhold any funds from a $300 deposit. We have on several occasions withheld the full $800 deposit, and then, you know, they had to go through the insurance for replacement. So yeah.
Honey,
yes.
Do we have a cleaning fee?
We do not currently have a cleaning fee. We did include in the cost per hour in our costs we included the cost of that. It has been discussed over the years to have a cleaning fee and
Outsource it.
and to potentially outsource it.
And I think that's what the Cottonwood facility does.
They do.
That's what
They
it looks like.
outsourced to Milton. Yeah, that was in there.
Because really, I
They
mean,
don't-
it's the same five
yeah.
guys who do the parks, who do the streets,
Right.
you know. And it's really Efren is the primary cleaner of the building. It's just a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And that's
I think you
Yeah.
outsource it and you include it in your fee structure.
One of the things that we heard from Cottonwood on that, the challenge that they face is getting somebody in here in time, you know, like we got meetings the next week, getting them scheduled and getting them in time and getting the job done. So it is very convenient for us having our own staff to do it. You know, I mean, that is Efren's primary job. He takes care of all of the facility cleaning for the entire town.
But if it's a large event, it might be worth it versus a small event. You might be able to do,
For your 200-person event.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
50-person event.
Yeah.
Maybe you could probably tack on a cleaning fee without.
Well, I contemplated adding an ambassador fee. In fact, I think we have it on a list to have an actual ambassador fee so that for those larger events, we can make the determination to say, based on the kind of event this is or the size of this event, we need extra staff here. And so we have the capability to say it's going to be another $17 an hour on top of your to cover all of the expense for
Which
that.
is low, by the way.
Yeah.
And we could do the same thing for cleaning.
Yeah,
For
kind of
events of a
public
certain
art.
size, we could have a cleaning fee. And if that's your recommendation, then we'll plan to put that, you know, if you
I
think
think
that's a
look
place we want to
at
go.
that.
Well, heck, Airbnbs, they charge $150 cleaning fee that you don't get back. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's a line item on your rental.
And I think for the larger ones, it makes sense to outsource that. Because they do often better. Yes, Lisa.
However, would that discourage people from good stewardship of the building if they say somebody else is going to clean it anyway?
Well, yes and no. It's hard to say because I don't know, Joni, give us your opinion on that. Do you believe that would be for a private renter discouraging to them? Would they abuse the building more?
Well, I think it's certainly a possibility that
Okay.
they may look at, well, I'm paying a cleaning fee. We have people ask us, do you have a cleaning service that will come in and clean up after for us? Because we don't want to do it. I would pay somebody to do that.
Yeah.
So if, you know, I mean, we just put in their policy and their paperwork that they sign that, you know, this $150 cleaning fee, yeah, is above and beyond your rental and you know,
I mean,
but you're also expected to still clean the building.
bottom line, if you have 250 times 2 feet running around a place, it gets dirty and things happen. And
Right.
I can tell you the kitchen at the Cottonwood Rec Center last year after that event looked like a disaster, but who knows? I mean, it's just the fact of running an event.
I think for the most part, because of our ambassadors, so that's part of their job, is they walk through with every renter at the beginning and look and make sure everything is clean and ready to go. And then they walk through with them at the end and everybody signs off that, you know, everything is good to go. It's just, you know, it's still, some things are falling through the cracks. So again, that's on us as far as doing better training with our.
Question is, are you expecting your renters to just have it, what they call broom clean, or do they need to get in there and scrub the bathrooms and scrub the counters and
Clean the bathrooms. They do not mop the floor. They need to leave the building in the same shape that it was when they came in. So they have to stack up the tables and chairs. They have to sweep all of the debris, and but we don't necessarily want them mopping because, you
it needs to be mopped a certain way.
Over here on the floor.
I don't think
It's not good to have
that
any
wasn't one of
issues.
our renters, just so you know.
I know. That's what happens if you do that.
So for the most part, you know, and I don't want to paint this picture that, you know, we have a lot of non-stewards, because we don't, that isn't the case at all. People really do care, and they do a good job of cleaning, but it's not always perfect.
Well, I guess if we have the ambassadors doing the check-in and the check-out, then maybe that issue is not as big. If we even say it.
Bottom line is it's still dirty and it needs to be cleaned.
Yeah,
Something needs
it's
to clean
dirty,
it
it
before
needs
the
to be cleaned.
next renter comes in.
So I'm not so sure they're going to hurt the building any worse. They might leave, they might not. Yeah, it's just gonna have to be
We need
cleaned.
to have
I'm
them
not sure
mop
it's-
it, because
No.
what I see is that they wouldn't,
I think she means a cleaning fee.
A cleaning
cleaning
fee.
fee. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
I
let
think
us
a cleaning
look at-
fee is not going to make them less responsible for the billing, because we have a process of the ambassadors checking them in, checking them out.
Yeah.
Well, and they're less, I don't think that's gonna defer them from renting either.
No, I
Kind
don't
of
think
an
it's going
expected
for a big
fee.
event.
No, I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
I don't think so.
think
I
it's
mean, you're
expected.
gonna have some people that are gonna take that attitude, but you're gonna have some people that, you know, don't want to clean it well either. You know,
I think
even if they
it's
weren't.
industry accepted.
So I think that's a good point. And let's talk about that. So our thing is to simplify the hourly rate and to improve the facility rental packet communication. So we're going to take a really hard look at our rental packet, simplify it, but be very clear. Some people have a one-page thing that just has a name and address and not a whole lot of information. Our application alone is a 3-page application, I think. And it explains everything, but it's really small print. It's really, you know, I think we can really kind of dial that down to exactly what we need to know and get that information for them and maybe reduce it, but also they're signing off. It's all of the policy. So when they sign that agreement, they're saying, I've read all that policy and I know exactly what I need to do. Yeah.
Do we have a need to have that translated into Spanish?
Yes, we do. Thank you. We have discussed that and just haven't had the resource to get there, time and resource. Okay, anything, okay, wait. Consider cleaning and setup and breakdown of council chamber space, labor intensive, damaging floors and chairs. Our recommendation is to consider, and this is a hard one for me to get to, I'm not gonna lie, is to consider this is a council area and a council area only, meeting for boards and commissions and council only. We leave the chairs, we put up our portable walls across. The challenge that we have is that we have to get people into the bathroom. So we're gonna have to put the walls this way and this way, all the way to the end to protect
And that
this
takes
area.
the bar out of play.
It takes this side of the bar out of play, yes. The other side, because now that they can enter through the door on the other side, they could still use this side, the side on near the door.
That's okay. As long as they
For
can use that
service.
side, then
Yeah.
that's okay.
It's very difficult for me because this is our most rented space because it's the most beautiful. You don't have to do a lot to decorate. You can put some pretty tables in and be good to go. And people really love it for that reason. And it's intimate. But by doing that, we will be cutting down the square footage of the facility. So we've taken that into consideration in fees. But
also by grouping the ladies lounge with this room, then they have, because most people put like the food buffet or whatever, the dessert buffet in here, then they have the ladies lounge to do that with the food.
Yeah, and it's not a big area because right now we put the walls from here to there. So they have just the space where the chairs are. But Terry Norman is really concerned about this floor. It's very fragile, it's old, it's not replaced. We don't want to have to replace it. We would like to keep this history. Same thing with the court floor. I know it's not pretty, but it's historic.
What is it? Do you know what it is?
No,
Just curious.
some kind of linoleum, slate. I
I was gonna say slate, maybe?
But you can see it has a lot of scratches from moving these chairs. And so he's just really, really concerned about that.
I think, you know, the way I'm in support of doing that, because even when we've had it where we cut it off there, we don't do enough to give sort of a hallway to get into the restrooms, because I see people getting back into this area.
Sitting in the chairs and.
You know, that's still our challenge, is how are we going to?
We might have to get more walls. But it is we would like you to consider leaving the council set up permanently and partitioning the full council area except for the bathrooms.
Yeah, I think so.
Would there be any exception to that? For example, like the policeman's banquet, or would it always be hard and fast? No, we're not gonna.
That's kind of up to council. What do you recommend? Would you like to say that we could make exceptions for certain events for town sponsored?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not against that.
Okay. Okay, we're getting there, guys. We're almost done. You're doing so well. Thank you. Okay, so rental rates are low compared to market rates. Potential solution: consider market or near market rates for non-Clarkdale residents and discount for Clarkdale residents. Well, we have a suggestion. So, and then of course our new fees are needed, potential new fees, in addition to facility rentals. Oh, I guess it's on here. Our cancellation fee. We do not currently have a cancellation fee. A view deck fee. And so I have done an accounting on that as to what that cost us to do. Terry Norman got that for me. And so we know over the course of 20 years or more what the depreciation is on that and what we would need to charge. It's not a lot, but right now we currently don't charge anything. And when somebody uses it, it will have to be, you know, hosed off and cleaned, potentially before and after an event.
I mean, I think for an outdoor facility that is quite lovely, we need to not underestimate the fee for that. Okay. Because I think we've talked about in the past some ideas of fencing or, you know, some stuff along in there to make it even more, you know, usable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we should underestimate what that view deck could be as a use area certain times a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I also don't think that that should be town subsidized. We know that that's a blank slate. You can contact any rental company you want to come in and bring in trees and shade and furniture and all these things, because we've done.
But I just don't want us to underestimate what the cost of that. We don't have to make it outrageous, but
yeah, a lot of some of the rentals that we looked at, they had like, you know, a flat $100 or you know, $100 if you rented a facility and $200 if or more, $300 if it was a standalone, something along those lines.
Right.
So those are some things you can look at. The thing is, though, we do not have restrooms out there.
Exactly.
So you almost have to rent the facility. And then we've got all of those facility costs on top of that we need to consider, because for that rental, it's going to cost the same amount of money as it does for every other rental.
Unless they have the option to bring in porta potties that are
yes,
like
they
the
do.
Nice
they
ones.
could absolutely bring in porta potties. And we
that's great for a wedding.
Yeah.
Great for a wine festival.
Those nice ones. They have those fancy.
They have the
ones.
nice fancy ones.
Okay, so we're also looking at table and chair fee and obviously a simplified hourly rate, getting us to the almost grand finale of rates, what we've been working toward. So what we did was for the current cost per hour for a for the auditorium and ladies lounge is $75 an hour with those two rates combined, which is $35 and $50 for the auditorium. I'm sorry, that's $85 for a non-resident and it's $75 for a resident currently. We did the cost recovery on that. And that is with no CIP included. It includes the maintenance, the general annual maintenance cost, but not the CIP, came to $75 an hour. The reason being why it's the same is because this $75 an hour is only for the first 8. So when you start charging $75 an hour for every hour of a 20-hour event, then you can
The revenue is higher, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay.
Right. And then our market comp with an auditorium size facility, we took those average per square foot rates, and for a building, we took, oh my gosh, the auditorium and the ladies lounge combined, and we came up with the market comp of $200 for the men's lounge, ladies lounge.
No, the auditorium and
ladies lounge get you there. Auditorium and ladies lounge, and then our recommendation on that. Oh, the cost recovery for non-resident, we included the CIP.
Gotcha.
So think about that. So now the non-residents are paying for some money toward our maintenance, to our CIP, to our capital projects. We don't want to really charge our residents because
that's double dipping.
They're already taxpayers, right? So our recommendation on that is to keep, for residents, to keep the rate at 75. That's our cost recovery, right? But 75 for every hour, and to consider $200, which is the market rate per hour. That's a big leap. Yeah.
So I love this, but I am a little concerned that maybe people are going to move into their aunt's house in Clarkdale. How are we gonna ask them for their residents?
So we've talked about that. There will be policies in place. They have to provide a driver's license that shows a Clarkdale address. They have to complete paperwork that says that they are truthfully signing that they are a Clarkdale resident. They have to pay us with the renter who is liable. They're signing that paperwork and, you know, being liable for that event. So if it's Aunt Susie that lives down the street, we're saying you have to get the insurance in your name. You have to put everything in your name. You have to pay for it with your money, and we will only refund to a Clarkdale address. So we're like,
I figured that.
And they have to attend, so they have to be there for the walkthrough. So
They have to be here.
right. So we'll have a whole list of things to prove you're a resident.
And if you're not, you're taking on the liability.
Right.
Okay.
So any provision for Clarkdale-owned businesses?
well, currently, that's a really good question. Currently, we offer the Clarkdale resident rate as the nonprofit rate as well. So nonprofit, but that doesn't include businesses. So that's something for you all to.
I'm thinking you've got business owners all over town. that maybe don't necessarily live here, but they work here?
We could just
But
lump them in
couldn't
with
they run
residents.
the contract through their business?
That's what I'm asking. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, because their driver's license wouldn't necessarily
say like-
show.
Bent
Clarkdale.
River Machine, let's say Bent River Machine.
They want to have a
Or
Christmas
Molden-
party.
Or Molden Graphics,
They want to have a Christmas party,
Christmas
but
party. What are we going to charge
put
her?
that in the
We
policy.
charge them, yeah, we charge them what we
Resident
charge
fee.
Clarkdale residents.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we just have to make it in policy.
So we struggled on this one on the non-resident. So you see the cost recovery, including a proportionate, we took the total CIP for this year, divided by the number of days, then backed into it by hour, the size, the length of the event. So the cost recovery, including that, is 147, but the market rate is 200. So we were vacillating between the 147 and 200. Do we go all the way to the 200 or we kind of go halfway in between? So that was something we'd love your feedback on. Yes.
I like it. I think it makes sense. But is that just the rental and no add-on fees as well?
Yeah, because we don't have any.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's where it can start
Yeah, but-
getting, you have all the add-ons.
That's what I wanted you to see this, to think about those add-on. Now, again, we're recouping some CIP, probably not all, but a good portion of it. And that's going to change year over year. So yeah. I
And
mean,
also this price, does it matter how big your event is? I don't see that you have any differentiation between a
It's
100
kind of
person
driven by-
event and a 500 person.
well,
driven
so
by the
here
size.
comes kind of.
It's the space that you're
The
renting.
space, the auditorium and kitchen are large
Big.
events. They're going to be large events. And we have a 13-hour minimum, those that
Okay.
we talked about earlier.
And Joni made a really good point. The 147 is based upon this year's CIP, which is 345,000.
345,000.
But we originally had the windows budgeted, which was 450,000. So, if we had done the windows, if we gotten the grant and done the windows, we would have had a $750,000 year in CIP. So that's where kind of eking it up towards the 200 probably covers it on other years where we're doing big projects.
Oh, Laura has a point.
I'm trying, as somebody who has rented the facility before, it feels there's an incongruency that I can rent the larger space for much less money than I can rent the smaller space.
The minimum is a lot longer.
13 hours.
I know, but I'm just
Oh, I know.
pointing that
Because
out.
that isn't the way it is now.
Yeah,
Now it's $50 for the auditorium
yeah.
and it's $35 for
Yeah,
this
well, I'm
space.
not saying what happens now is.
But we're also including the ladies lounge. So
Yeah.
it's
So
70.
you've got-
But my other point is that in 13 hours, we make a lot more money. We end up
Right,
making
Yeah.
more money from a large event than
Yeah.
we.
and my thing with the auditorium, the 200 seems high to me. So, I mean, I've written down 150 an hour here, but that's just and I like the idea of the nonprofit rate. Nonprofits get the town resident rate.
I have that.
Marnie, you had a point before me.
I don't think I did. Go ahead. I think I just turned to look at Laura.
Personally, I think it's easier to raise your rate to the amount you want than to raise your rate a little bit now. And then next year you come back to us with the same study.
Yeah.
So I would think accepting people who are already under contract because they already have a contract.
Right.
I say hit it hard. I mean, get to market rate now. Otherwise, it's going to be, 150 this year, 200 next year, 250, it's going to be incremental.
Yeah.
And people are going to get irritated. I think you do it once.
So is there a rate you can get to that could be all inclusive? So it includes all your add-ons. So it's like, regardless, and some days you're going to win and some days you're going to lose. because
Eating the cleaning.
all those add-ons that you want.
Share.
Yeah, for non-resident, that would be still cost recovery most likely, just depending on what rate. So you could say, you're not going to do any add-ons, it's 150, but if you're going to do add-ons, it's 200 or something like that. Kind of a package like we talked about.
That
So
would
if
be,
somebody-
if
that's a
somebody wanted to,
possibility.
they could bring in their own, they could, Verde Valley Rentals, bring in your own tables and chairs.
So the advantage of that is if you're using town stuff, you're putting it up and you're taking it down. You call
them,
they'll come in, if you pay them, they'll come and set them up and they'll take them away.
I kind of like what she said of that sort of, and Susan kind of said it. I'm getting tired and very hungry, so I'm sorry. That's okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
That's like
about
a package price and a
right.
bare
I
bones
kind of
price
like
maybe.
that idea of the package price because I think that's clear. They'll know exactly what's included or not included. And if they want the higher one, then this is what's included.
I'm thinking every event, you're gonna want chairs because people need to sit, right? So it's like, I'm not sure why you would pay an uplift for that. Just include it in your price. Now, what
So
they do with those chairs.
Of the higher fee, but include the add-ons that are in the higher fee, just turnkey.
I can't imagine somebody just renting the space and just standing the whole time. Standing for 13 hours.
But like
The
Made in
challenges.
Clarkdale,
Pardon me?
I was gonna say like Made in Clarkdale brings in most of itself and it probably uses 8 chairs and 3 tables or something.
Very good example, yeah.
No, Made in Clarkdale uses every table and
Yeah, I
chair.
guess we do use all the tables now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I know.
So a challenge we have is that we have not, although we have a storage problem for chairs, I would recommend if we're going to do a table and chair package that when we cap our event, if we're going to do that to 200 or 250 people, that we have that amount available. Public Works is going to say that, and I understand, we walked to this building and we looked for spaces. The only place they have to store that stuff is in the basement. And that is a pain. They have to literally, they're on racks, but it's too steep for them to take them down to the basement.
It's not an easy
So we
ramp.
don't have any storage for tables and chairs, but we should, because if we're going to do that, or we
don't have them and people have to bring them in.
or we don't do tables and chairs at all.
And we just use them for our events.
And store them up on the stage then, or wherever.
That would make your pricing simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
So
is
then
just a
would you
facility
lean
rental
more-
and you go get your stuff.
Yeah.
So if we did that, would you lean more towards the 147 or halfway between 147 and 200? But if it's
I'd say at least 175.
I'd go the full 200. Yeah.
Yeah. It gives us some dollars to maybe put in a longer term fund for bigger projects down the road that we know might come.
and one thing that
We might have
It
a
might-
surplus.
it might decrease the use on the facility, which is one of our objectives.
One of your goals, yeah.
And then when people actually use it, we might keep our revenue line the same.
Exactly.
But I'm going to tell you, the revenue is negligible. When you look at, I think this year it was one of the highest ever, and it's $18,000.
Yeah, it's not-
It doesn't even.
I know, but it,
Then we need to protect our staff time. We need to allow them to do the other parts of their job.
so that we've got to supplement it somewhere.
And I think if you decrease the size of your events and increase the price, you're
You're
gonna
gonna
reach those goals, right?
Is there a reason we don't have a proposed fee just for use of the ladies lounge and kitchen?
We have it. We just didn't include it.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's in there because that's a nice little intimate, small space.
We began work on that today, and we weren't feeling confident because here's what happens then if it's only that space, if we only, then why wouldn't we only have a men's lounge space, or why wouldn't we only have a ladies lounge or auditorium space like we already do?
And the fee becomes lower, and then
Like,
we still have all the work to do.
Right, I was gonna say the fee goes lower, but the work stays the same.
And if it's not a match for somebody, they'll just go somewhere else, and that's okay.
So just so you know the process here, we're not voting on anything today. We're getting feedback. Then we will be bringing a fee ordinance forward with a lot of other fee changes from other departments. This one was just so subjective. We really wanted your input. So we will come back with final recommendations for you to vote on.
Did this help, or did it give you more questions than answers?
oh, really, really helpful, and some good ideas. I mean, another thing that just came to mind was, you know, maybe the tables and chairs are just for residents only that we currently have, because 9 out of 10 times they don't just use, for the big events, they don't just use our tables and chairs. They can't.
They bring in other stuff.
They rental companies come in for every one of those big events. So they're already renting anyway, you know.
Right, don't subject ours to that additional wear and
And
tear.
the guys having to schlep up.
Yeah.
Because our
That's not
number,
fun.
because our number of Clarkdale residents is low, and their events typically are smaller. Now, I do know we have, you know, 2 Clarkdale residents with large events this year, but that's not the normal. And you know, with that in mind, you know, I think that it wouldn't be a bad idea to be able to include what we have, and you know, be able to, you know, replace what we're losing, and if we have those funds.
Do you want to go over the men's lounge costs? Because they're kind of weird.
They are. So the men's lounge for a resident currently is, and the reason it's weird is because it's only 5 hours. So it's not that long stretched out time. So we have residents at 60, non-residents at 70. And our currently is what they pay for those 2 spaces. So we're talking men's lounge and ladies lounge. And then with no CIP, the cost recovery is $135 for a resident. And with the CIP included for non-resident. Yeah, so now we go to the market rate. So the market rate for this size space, or for those 2 spaces, is $240. And so our thought was the $135 for the resident, and then the $240 for the non-resident. Now, the thing about that is, keep in mind, we're cutting down the square footage, but we did calculate those numbers on cutting that down, just in case.
For this space.
For this space.
This is such a great space, though, and so desirable. I would almost increase both of those, just because of the historic factor. A lot more risk renting these.
So what number would you be? So, I mean, on the resident, I mean, from a methodology, we feel like we don't want to raise them because they're already paying taxes that offset some of that.
Yeah.
But on the non-resident, what number would you think we should go to then?
Well, see, even for the resident, I'd maybe go up to 175. 175.
Here's where this gets wooky. So you've got a 5-hour minimum. What if I want to rent this for 13 hours?
You can rent it for 13 hours.
It's $135 an hour.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. We talked about that a little bit, and just, you know, at what point, I know.
Yeah. Like, where do you do
this? Was one of the most complicated processes I have ever been through, just because of, you know, trying to fit all the what ifs. And, you know, we know they're there with somebody. We talked about doing half day and full day rates to simplify it. But then you've got somebody, you know, who only wants it for
6 hours.
6 hours. And then, you know, and we went through that process. I don't know if you remember, but we were at half day and full day, and we went to an hourly rate to simplify.
Well, and we talked too about you know, you start thinking about, oh, after the, you know, this is kind of the base thing, and then we lower the rate, but that's the conundrum we've gotten into with the auditorium now, where we're cutting our legs off.
Well, but I think market rate of this space at 240, I think that's reasonable. It's consistent. I think 135, we have to do cost recovery. And I know, you know, but they have, I think we stay at 135, 240. That's my feel.
I agree that we need to do cost recovery on residents. I have a problem with making money off residents because they are already paying their taxes.
Right. So
Other people, let's take all their money, but residents, they're
that's right. So 135 is fine. I think 135 is fine. I don't want to make any money off of our residents. But on the non-resident,
you're at market, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, 240 is market. I don't think we can go above that.
And then we would be consistent between the two spaces that we went to market.
Yeah.
And the two, you know,
Yeah.
it benefits in one, it hurts in the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next slide.
Last slide.
Control. All it says is control.
Control. You've lost all control. Okay, so control is basically the ongoing measurement of the decisions that are made of the process that we're going to go forward with. So once we get to that total decision on what we're going to do and going forward, we'll be measuring that, continue to measure that, so that we make sure that we can validate our improvements as we go forward. And that we feel that's really important. And this is probably the biggest piece because, you know, well, I was going to say it's easy to make the decisions. It's not, because it's all over the place. But once we get here, then we really need to do that. And then also it's going to be important to put policies in place that help guide us to make sure that we're doing that. So that's what the control is. That's what we'll be back with at some point to keep you updated as to how we're doing and keeping those measurements going. And we've got a great base to start with now to go forward with all of this data.
Absolutely.
It's been a great process.
The work shows. So
it
good
really
job.
does. But just one question on control. Doesn't our city, or I mean, our town software have a rental element as a part of it that could help manage this?
Yes, it does.
And are we going to exercise that option?
Yes, we are when we have time to do. We
Just
just literally have not had the time to get in there and do that. So yes, it is on our list of things to get done.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, thank you.
I just asked that same
And
question.
thank you for putting this together. This is very enlightening and what a project.
Well, thank you all for your consideration of this. You know, I know the one thing that we do need to do is to get the go ahead to do the fee. Yeah,
I think we've got it.
I think you've got a lot of direction from us.
Okay.
I don't see that we were debating a lot on that. So you've got
Initiating.
direction
okay, perfect.
to do that.
Great.
And a lot of other things
He
that
was
we
over
kind
here. I
of
sent
threw
it
in
to
there
you.
for
You
you
just
to
went back to
consider.
the
other
So I do applaud you. Absolutely applaud you, Joni.
Well, I want to thank you all for your patience and getting through it with me.
That's okay. It's
I know
our
there
job
were
to
a
do
few things I left out along the way, but we got through it in not a good time, but we did.
No, it was a good job.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much
Good
on
job.
this. Yes. Okay, our final item is future agenda items. We've got the list. Yes.
I do have a question. So this says that budget is all day on the 27th, and I have it on my calendar on the 26th.
That's exactly
Hold on,
what I
let me
was
look.
looking at too.
I think that's what I heard. Thank you.
Just want to make sure I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
27th is a Monday? No, that's
Thursday.
hard.
Thursday.
I'm on the wrong one.
It's the 26th,
It is the 26th. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
and
thank you.
it's 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I doubt that we'll take the whole time, but we just like to reserve it with you.
Right.
Anything else?
Do we hear anything else? Nobody wants to bring up anything? Cool. With that, and with your permission, all of you, if there's no objection, I'd like to adjourn the meeting at, I closed my 8:14. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
No, I'm